Hello, everyone. We'll be starting in about a minute or two. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone who has joined us today for what's going to be a really special discussion. I'm very pleased to kick off this wonderful ISSA Los Angeles monthly meeting. And I wanted to just share a little bit about ISSA Los Angeles. I don't know if many of you know that we are the founding chapter of ISSA International. And our goal is to promote management practices that will ensure the availability, integrity, and confidentiality of information. I want to give a shout out to my fellow board members who have done a wonderful job in putting on events such as this and the famous Security Summit, which we didn't have this year, but we will have once things get a little safer for all of us. But thank you to all my fellow board members for fantastic work over the years. And hopefully that you'll be able to join our community if you have not already. It's very simple, ISSA-LA.org. We're not for profit. Consider joining us. You'll get notifications for future meetings such as this. You'll stay connected with your fellow InfoSec professionals. It helps your career. We can't do this alone. We all know that. Big shout out to our educational sponsors who will provide discounts for you. If you check out these four wonderful companies, you will see some discounts that you'll be able to apply. And again, thank you for those folks who are helping us and helping you. We've got a social media presence, as you might imagine. If you're over 30, we have Facebook, and if you're under 30, we have Instagram. So please do join us. We don't have Snapchat, but anyone who wants to volunteer to publish Snapchat photos for us, we're very happy to have you volunteer. But of course, we're on LinkedIn and Twitter as well, and Meetup, as you know, as you probably have seen. So please consider joining us. We have lots of interesting posts and discussions that we kick off with these things. So think about that. We've got some really great upcoming meetings scheduled. We've got an old friend, Ira Winkler, coming in next month in October. He's got a new book out, so he'll be talking about that. And we have Chris Rides, who will be kicking off a panel on hiring during a pandemic, important information. We're hoping to get some really great participants on that panel to discuss what's going on here during this unfortunate time. And then we've got a privacy panel. We may or may not be talking about the new California legislation. Let's see where it leads. But this is very timely, and we've got some lawyers and privacy professionals to discuss that. Very important stuff. So please mark these. We always meet on the third Wednesday of every month at 11:45. We used to meet in person in the evening, but now we're all virtual. And so rather than intrude on your personal home time, you can hopefully squeeze an hour and a half from your busy work life. But do join us. These are really good talks. And all of our talks are posted and recorded on YouTube. So do, where you're watching now, our YouTube page is there for you. So please do consider that. Today, we're really fortunate to have some unbelievable leaders in the field. They're going to be talking about a really important issue. Most of everyone here has friends or associates that are minorities, and everyone has friends or associates that are women. We've got to be sensitive because there's different communication standards and different ways that people can present things, such as job openings, right? If you use the language of war and kill and let's destroy the competition, that may or may not compromise the ability to open it up to certain types of people. And we've got to be sensitive. And if you see anything, I was surprised because here in Southern California, we're pretty open and engaging with everybody. But I have seen lots of Twitter posts about very unfortunate incidents where people are targeted, women are made fun of, anything that they say, people comment on in a negative fashion, and that's really unacceptable. If you see something, you need to speak out and support our fellow people. And there's a shortage of qualified InfoSec people. So it's not just doing the right thing, the moral thing, the ethical thing, it's also the future of security in this country and in the world. So I'm going to let this panel continue this conversation. And I want to introduce Deidre Diamond. She's the founder and CEO of CyberSN and the founder of Secure Diversity. And she's also a former speaker at the ISSA Security Summit, where she did a great job, had top reviews. She has combined her 25 years of experience working in technology and staffing with her love for the cybersecurity community to create CyberSN. It's a company transforming the way cybersecurity professionals approach job searches. She's also the founder of Secure Diversity, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing the cybersecurity talent shortage. We know how important that is. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over the controls to our illustrious panel and to our moderator, Deidre.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's always great to be around you. I wish it was on the ocean at our event as usual. That being said, I really appreciate you making this conversation front and center. You've been doing that for years, and I know my fellow panelists here feel the same. So thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm going to pretend like I'm in LA, even though I know it's challenging times for California, but I'm born and raised in Irvine, so it feels good to think of all of you in California, and I am super sorry for everybody's dealing with the tragedies that are there. And so let's escape for a little bit and see for the next hour if we can come together as a unit and really dive into current challenges that we're all facing. If you read the title of our panel here, it's quite different, even though the words look very familiar. We specifically thought to ourselves, we want to take this conversation a little bit deeper, and that's why it's called Inclusion Before Diversity. All of us have been out there working on diversity initiatives for years and years, and we're also seeing very slow progress and seeing a lot of challenges still within organizations. So what I asked all of our panelists to do today is to come prepared to talk about what is inclusion, because it is, of my opinion, that inclusion, it comes before diversity, because if we want diversity, we need to own inclusion. And certainly we'll share, at the end, some of the things that we're doing on the diversity space so that you can all join us. Questions can be asked. We have a board where we're watching the questions. We'll bring some in as we go, and we'll take some at the end, but we've got an hour, and if we run over a few minutes, I've been told that's okay. So on that note, I always think it's best if everybody gets to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just dive into our first topic of inclusion and what is it. So Anu, why don't you share with us your bio, if you will.
Hi everyone, Anu Koshi, Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion at UST Global. Very excited to be in the panel today.
It's great to have you. Awesome, thank you. Marci.
Hello everybody, thanks for having me today. I'm Marci McCarthy. I'm the CEO and president of T.E.N, and I'm also on the board of directors for ICMCP, which brings forth and helps advances, I should say, minorities and women in cybersecurity. And I have a scholarship that I've set up through that organization, and I'm proudly awarded 8 young women and minority men the opportunity to get the Security Plus certification. So we're going to be launching it again actually in a couple of weeks. So we had a board meeting last night, so stay tuned on that. But really great to be with all of you today.
That's awesome, Marci. I'm familiar with ICMCP. That's where we met years and years ago. And that initiative, it's a great initiative. I saw today that WESIS and ICMCP did a joint partnership. I love WESIS too. And that's just wonderful to see all of us continuing to, merge our not-for-profits and our for-profits and work together. That's so awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Jimmy. Hi.
Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy Sanders. I'm the president for the San Francisco chapter of ISSA. I run the security for Netflix DVD, and I'm also on the board of ISSA International. It's great to be here with you and to be able to talk. And thank you, Deidre.
Yeah, I heard that was a recent promotion and our acceptance of a seat. And ISSA has been around a long time giving to this community nationally. And I'm so happy to see them have you at the top. It's never easy, no matter what we're doing, it's all work. So I know you'll work. So I'm glad you're there. Awesome. Mari.
Hey everybody, Mary here. I am a senior security architect for one of the large casinos here in Las Vegas. When I'm not doing security work, I am the CEO and a founding board member for the Women's Society of Cyberjitsu. We do hands-on security training for women and for girls, and we build a community for them to feel like they're a part of cybersecurity so that they can advance and stay in the industry.
CyberJitsu has been one of my favorite programs for years and years and years because you are the first and really still the only teaching very technical skills to women, and it's really cool to watch all the engineers come out for what you all are doing. It's super cool, and it's great to have you. So sorry about saying your name wrong after all the work Richard did to say mine right, and we were all biting our tongue, and he said it twice, and then there I go. Unbelievable.
It's okay, I'm used to it.
Yeah, that's what I say. And still, it's like, how the heck? All right, team, let's get going here. Who wants to kick off here and speak about inclusion and how you've seen inclusion affect negatively or positively the diversity work you're doing, and just what the title means to you? Actually, why don't we just go in the same order we did, and then I'll switch it up. So, Ani, why don't you start and share with us?
Sure. So as the saying goes, diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belonging is dancing like no one's watching. I know we've all heard this multiple times, and it truly brings home the message. So to me, our title, it points to a very critical nuance. So today, companies spend a lot of money on diversity initiatives, tracking diversity metrics, but it really does not move the needle for them if there's no inclusion. So if there's no inclusion, people don't feel valued, they don't express their true self, they become disengaged, attrition increases, and companies have to spend even more money trying to keep up diversity hiring. So diversity, as we all know, is easy to measure, but inclusivity metrics are always much, much harder. So there's a natural tendency for companies to cling to diversity metrics. So I think from my standpoint, the two things to focus on really are inclusion literacy and also the focus on inclusive culture first and diversity second. It's really a cultural shift, according to me. So I think if we do that, we truly elevate the character of the company, and inclusion really fosters diversity.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard that phrase in so long. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have heard it in the past. But it's been forever. Invited to the party, but not the dance, right? Like, which is the best part. At least for me, it's the best part. I want to dance. And yet that's exactly what's happening. We're hiring diversity people that are, fall under diversity characteristics, and yet they're not being retained is what we're saying, everybody. And they're not being promoted. So even if they're retained, not being promoted doesn't change the game either. So I think what we're starting here is to say, wow, we did this backwards, or simultaneously we missed that simultaneous sort of conversation on behavior. So, Marci, what do you think about what Anu said, and what the solutions to what we're talking about?
Well, I definitely would agree with what she said, and I believe that diversity in the workplace isn't just a nice to have. When it's executed properly, it is a proven driver, of better performance. But the execution of it being properly is sort of the catch-22 with it, because you really can't have diversity without inclusion, because it's going to lead to a revolving door of talent at the end of the day. And while it may be seemingly easier just to hire people that are, minorities and women and just call it a day, the reality is that diversity only succeeds as when diversity and inclusion, is a priority, and the leaders of the organization make it a priority to promote the inclusion part overall. And people, you want to work for you because the role sounds interesting, certainly, but to keep them there in the long term and the sustainability of the role, you really have to make them feel like they're belonging in the organization at the end of the day. So diversity is certainly valuable on its own, but it's much more successful when you really incorporate inclusion. As inclusion is really the device that unlocks diversity. And I really believe that from my experience of that, because you can have the most diverse group of people overall, but if they don't feel like they belong together and can work cohesively together, you're just going to fail miserably. And you're really basing diversity on skin color, gender, and sexual preference, and a whole myriad of other things, not really what you bring to the team and to the culture of your company.
Right. We wanted diversity, so we went and sort of bridged the gap. And a lot of us have been involved in bridging that talent gap with diversity professionals, developing diverse professionals. And then they're going into the workforce and they're not seeing a lot of results. Is what we're saying. Not a lot of promotions. Women, as much as anybody of color. I mean, I represent 1%. That freaks me out every time. I say to myself, I'm the 1%. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is horrible. And truly, I walked into an inclusive environment out of college, and I would not be here had I not. And so that's, again, I want to talk about. So what is an inclusive environment? What is this? And I will tell you, and that, as somebody that operates the largest, cybersecurity staffing firm in the US for cyber talent, CISOs are moving jobs every 18 months. So how are they even, and we know most of them are white men. And so that means they're having lots of upset and moving jobs, which means if you're at that level, it takes a year to find your next role. You know that, Marci, it takes a year. That means you start looking at 8 months. So that means they're unhappy at 8 months. And oh my gosh, you're running the show. And so now somehow everything underneath is supposed to work as we're, bringing, individuals and saying we're going to train and promote you from within. And so my point is, I think there's a lot of upset even, amongst what we consider non-diversity people. And so that's the other reason why I want to beat this drum is like, okay, so what's going on inside our companies in terms of how we all interact with each other? And how do we fix our interactions such that we stick together and we stay together? I work for the same founding folks for 21 years across 3 different companies. So why am I the 1%? Because 1% of people ever see an opportunity like that, where, a couple of guys that treat people equally no matter what gender and open a bunch of companies and train and promote with you to go through them in tech. Like, okay, so where does anybody find that? And so what, Mari, Jimmy, let's go to you, Jimmy, in terms of following what we did before. What are you seeing that's causing the lack of inclusivity, and what do you?
So here's the thing: if you think you're the 1%, what percentage do you think I am?
Yeah.
I mean, because generally when I walk into a room, when I'm in meetings and things, I'm the only one. When I go to conferences or I do certain things, I am the only Black person who's like generally leading the stage or in the stage. So when you're in that position, or which many of you already know, and this is the part about inclusion, To me, inclusion is when you don't think that you have to work 120% harder than your person next to you to get the equal opportunity. That means you think that everything is a level playing field. To me, that's what inclusion is. Diversity is when you get to be on the team. Inclusion is when you're a part of the team and everybody hugs you the same way or gives you the same high five, and everybody gives you the secret handshake. I've worked for a lot of great companies, but trust me, there are secret handshakes that go on, but you may not call it a secret handshake. You may call it, this person went to this particular school, or this person knows this person. That's not inclusion. That's exclusivity. That's access. Inclusion is when you have that same access as your peers.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the term even playing field is inclusion. Right? Like, and even playing field means it's measurable that it's an even playing field. You can't just say it's an even playing field, which is why I'm a super proponent of roles and responsibilities clearly defined and measurable agreements clearly created such that there's no like why somebody got promoted or why they didn't get promoted. If all of that is truly transparent and set, it doesn't you can have an equal playing field. But are you kidding? I don't know anybody that's making their own job descriptions. They're just cutting and pasting them off of the internet and here's my job description. So if they're doing that, then there's no way that there's a baseline of jobs and roles and responsibilities defined enough to have equal promotions. Are we seeing any move in this, Mari? What do you think of what we're saying overall, and do you see that out in the world too?
So everything that everybody said, I completely agree with. I see stuff changing very slowly, to your point about job descriptions and roles and responsibilities, because the folks that develop those things, they don't even know. They're just kind of throwing stuff at the board and saying, I hope this sticks and I hope we can find this unicorn of this person. And a lot of times the words that they put in there, it excludes women. I've been looking at job descriptions recently and I'm just like, oh, I kind of meet half of these things, but then I don't meet this other half. I'm probably not going to apply to this, right? But I could probably do the job well with my experience. And so that happens across the board. But I think for inclusion, I think it's a cultural shift. Like Anu said, you have to change behaviors, you have to change the culture of the organization to truly be able to have an inclusive environment.
Yeah.
If it's still the good old boy system, it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to have an inclusive environment. I'll never get a seat at that table because I'm not a part of that good old boy system.
Right.
And that's not necessarily fair.
Right.
So
right. And
it's changing, but slowly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure we're all guilty, although let me not say, but make you all guilty. Are you guilty, as I'm guilty, of bringing your friends or bringing, colleagues that you worked with somewhere else? Like, this is something I'm hearing a lot of complaining going on in terms of how are we going to have diversity if we keep bringing our ex-colleagues and our friends that look like us instead of going out and finding. And that's a tough one, especially as a founder, putting my own money out there and hiring people over these years, right? Like the trust factor of people I know.
Yeah, but you're talking about a lot of VCs are the exact same way. So it's hard for us to blame the VCs when they're investing money into a company.
Right.
Exactly.
Guess who they're going to trust?
Right.
The people they know.
So what do we do? I mean, it's like, we would do the same or are doing the same in some, levels, although I'm 60% women.
So I'll take this one. So to me, what you would do is you would intentionally join and infiltrate organizations so that you can have a vast network of associates that you know. And so instead of you just hiring your friend, you're hiring your well-qualified associates who may be in other organizations, who may be at other companies. But if you always keep your network small, you'll always keep recruiting from that small network. But if you have a gigantic, vast network, or if you have ISSA, ISSA-LA, ICMCP, and you work together from that, you have 100,000 associates instead of a couple of 5 or 10.
Yeah. Yeah. For those that want to change, you know, definitely there's places to build your network, and I know there really are. Especially the younger generations that are coming up now. But what is who else wants to chime in on this, Marci? What do you think?
I would say, you know, human beings just in general are wired just to notice differences, and how they react to it is a little bit different across the board. But we're not always great at finding the similarities in us, and I think that's sort of a challenge, because I think we've even when we're hypersensitive now to it, but we're sort of looked at each other by our color of our skin, what part of the country, what religion we are, and things like that. And I think us as leaders, it's really up to us to figure out our shared values and how to unite us overall around shared goals and foster types of habits and inclusiveness in general before we really pick out our differences. I think it's a lot better to look at a glass half full than half empty at the end of the day. And if we can come together and figure out all the things that bring us together, that really makes us more of a united group of people versus a divisive group of people. And I think more now than ever, it's so important that we really think about that and really go out of our way to cross different barriers in terms of bringing people together, that you would be surprised at bringing people together because you have shared interests and shared values, and but you still could come from different backgrounds. At the end of the day, you would never have a baseball team with everybody being the pitcher or everybody being the catcher or everybody being in the outfield. You'd have a miserable and horrible baseball team. You know, you can't play shortstop in the outfield, and you damn well need a good pitcher to sit there and strike somebody out. So we've got to really think about it from a perspective like that of what brings us together. And with a team and building a team, I own a company. I've owned a company for a decade now. T.E.N is celebrating its 10th anniversary. My team is very diverse. We're all women for the most part. But at the end of the day, I have a creative team. I have a delivery team. I have a team that handles our technology and infrastructure. If all of them did the same exact thing, we would not have a successful business. But at the end of the day, we are on track for producing 95 unique events right now for 2020, and actually up about 20 events from last year overall. So where we are had an actual delivery, we've delivered 75 unique events this year. And last year overall, we did 76. And this is down in when we were doing in-person events only last year. And we had to go from in-person events to digital only events. So the pivoting was really critical. And if I didn't have a team at the end of the day that had brought different strengths to the table and we complemented our weaknesses, T.E.N would not be here today. And I'm so proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you can have, 90% of one gender and still have diversity, right? Because we didn't touch upon a ton of that, but, we're a world economy. Where we grow up is one piece that contributes to diversity. Age, right? And ethnicity, of course, can, just because you're a woman, right, could be all kinds of different thought diversity backgrounds.
Values and objectives, right? So at the end of the day, we're a very diverse group of people. We come from all over the place to different backgrounds, but we have a vested interest in seeing T.E.N being successful and moving forward. And we were challenged like everybody else during COVID, and now we've really risen to the top, and our programs are still being very well attended, and that people like the new format. So if you challenge your team and you rally around something, it doesn't matter what you look like, what you do, things like that, but it's really about a common goal. And that's why if you think about sports and the analogy of that, it really makes sense when you kind of think about inclusion as it relates to diversity.
I like what you said when you first started speaking about we all want the same things. I started to talk about 3 years ago, which is we all want the same 7 things at work. And I think you're right. You just reminded me, like, we have the baseline that we all want equal pay. We all want, training and
wait. I've never argued for equal pay. I want to get paid more than anybody else. So we'll just stop there right there.
I used to be serious. You can't say that. Just play the stock market. Now, we all want to be treated with respect. I mean, who doesn't want to be treated with respect, right? We all want to, have roles and responsibilities clearly defined, and so, yes, this is where we must start. Is what are the rules to create inclusion in organizations? And I know, I'm sure you feel this way, Marci. Having an organization under 100 is a lot easier than 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Like I've only ran or led, I shall say, 350 has been my highest. And keeping a culture even of mine, in place at that, it was hard. And so when I think about these big corporations, how are we going to do this? Anybody got some ideas to share?
You've got to know your people, regardless of the company size, and you've got to learn what they want to do with their careers. And that means as a leader and manager, you've got to make the time to listen and understand how your team really, what motivates them and what kind of drives them. This may mean you might lose a team member, certainly, because they're not going to be able to align with what your goals are as a company as theirs is from a career perspective. But one size does not fit all, and taking that time to make the investment in each team member, and that's something we really do at T.E.N, is to really understand what's important. So when we are doing the annual reviews, for example, we're asking specifically, what do you think? And we do a self-assessment. The individual and their manager each do an assessment, and we have to look at both sides of the coin and see if they match up. And if there is a major discrepancy, then why is that being the case? But it rarely ever happens, because it's really important, because our leadership team that has a team that we're reporting in to them is making the time to listen and understand. And then we're setting goals and objectives. And we are a small company, but we're still setting very tangible goals and objectives for the next 6 to 12 months in terms of a career perspective of what they can try to do or want to do. And because we're a small company, the theoretical upward movement of a corporation is not really technically in existence, but it is what we want to make it. So to us, the sky is the limit, and there is no limit to the sky. So if they want to take on more responsibility and grow, I'm all for it. And I love that they want to, add that to their challenge versus taking that as the status quo.
Yeah.
And that makes a great leader, whatever size company you are.
I think that's the number one thing, opportunity, right? Anu, what were you going to add there? Opportunity.
I completely agree with Marci, right? And UST, my company, we operate in 25 countries. We have 25,000 employees around the globe. So for us, I think it's simple things making all the difference, right? So we rotate meeting times when multiple time zones are involved. We point out who shared an idea originally, regardless of whether it came from your CISO or your youngest security analyst. And, basically it's about providing avenues. So if there are inclusion issues, providing avenues for people to bring it up, right? So I think even small things make a huge difference when we look at scale.
Yeah, I like that, avenues. So it's almost like you're creating opportunities in your organization by meetings being at different time zones, or making sure that whatever project was brought up or solution was brought up, that whoever brought it up got recognition. These are avenues to recognize people and to treat them equally, like a time zone. Why should it be the US or whatever country that gets the best time? Yeah, I love that. You had to institutionalize that as an organization or a department. Do you see that more department based, or is it the whole organization typically?
The whole organization, pretty much. So we work with people in different countries, and we have to be considerate of others and their time zones, and yeah.
And I think that's great. I've heard a lot of big organizations now starting to have a management group, like you make your culture, you're the manager, you're responsible for these people, have a culture, more subcultures, such that they feel like they could get. I've heard of that. I don't know how it's going, if anybody's got any experience with that. But, the idea is that a manager is responsible. That's what Marci was talking about. You're responsible for this person's career. It'd be great if the company did all the work for you, but if they don't, you as a manager need to, right?
Yeah.
Mary, what do you?
I think to piggyback off of what Marci was saying, With the annual reviews, sometimes you have to, so you have the annual review, but then you have to go back, quarterly, just to keep, check in to make sure that they're on track with what they're trying to do, to see maybe something has changed and they want to go down a different route. And so that having those continuous conversations with the employees, with the teams, whether it's the whole company or it's the small groups, I think is really important. It's something that I've never had in my career. It's always been, all right, here's your annual review and here's how you messed up the entire year. It's like, well, that doesn't help me now. That was a year ago, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So,
having that is important.
so this is why I actually chime in, because it was illuminating to me when I started working for DVD and Netflix, is that I always thought that there was a myth that you had companies that really cared and gave you reviews instantaneously. And then when I got here, I realized that it was the exact case. Anytime you have an issue, you bring it up to the person. And so we have the philosophy called freedom and responsibility. And so what that simply means is that if you see something wrong, it's your responsibility to make sure that you say something about it. And you have the freedom to pretty much do what you want and see what you see fit. And it's one thing to say it, but when you actually get there and you see it and you're like, wow, that they just said that to so-and-so, or how you're just, so we obviously, we do annual reviews and things, but the big thing that I realized is that you never wait to do your review if you think that something is not going right. So as soon as you see, like, let's say you got a wonderful certificate, you should take it upon yourself to be incumbent, and you can do it in an email form or whatever, to highlight that attention and say, hey, I should get a raise. Even though it's not raise time, I deserve a raise, or I should have a promotion, or I should be working for a new group, or I'm not doing adequately. It's a two-way street, because if you're underperforming, it's also up to you to, acknowledge that. And so it's a weird environment if you don't really believe in it, because that's the other thing about inclusion. You have to believe that things are equal and that you have a voice to speak up in. And if you don't feel like, if you say that, because I've worked at a lot of companies, and this is where the inclusion part fell apart, where you have that champion. And that champion may be that developer or that key executive who, when that person's in town or when that person shows up, everything changes. Everybody has to kowtow to that person. But when you have true inclusion, it doesn't matter who shows up, everything stays the same, because we're not going to treat you like the snowflake. We're going to treat you like a wonderful employee that you are, but we're not going to deviate from our regular, amazing work environment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we really have to ask the questions for ourselves. Do we really have a culture at our respective organizations that's going to help us retain all the great talent that we want to have there? And what it doesn't matter if they're underrepresented because of the skin color, gender, or whatever. It's really about the talent that we have there that's comprising it, and they bringing forth great ideas, insights, and a contributor to the organization. And that's how we're going to bring forth the commonalities of all of us and the similarities. And again, going back to what I said earlier, it's really about that is what unites us, is what and will bring us together, because we all have the same end game.
That's right. That's right. And Jimmy, what you pointed out is mental safety, right? Like, they gave mental safety. That is the holy grail, as we say, meaning if a human can actually feel safe to externalize their internal communication, that's just what we call lightning in a bottle. When people, I remember when the VCs used to walk through all of my bullpens over the years, this is lightning in bottle. And I'm thinking, this is just, we're super transparent organization, and everybody's got everybody's back, and careers are totally laid out. Everybody knows how to move. Everybody knows what it takes to get to a certain position. And that can be really challenging to do, don't get me wrong, but I think it's worse to not do it and then have people who don't feel good, who aren't mentally cared for at work. Like, why, considering we all want to be treated that way, why would we have those cultures? And so we got to clean them up. How much work do we have to do, everybody? What do you think? Like, what is going on? Why doesn't everybody see this way and recognize that they're not treating others, well? What is it? Is it an EQ thing? Is it emotional intelligence? Or is it greed, or is it both?
We glorify assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do. Look at Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of inclusion literacy or lack thereof. At the end of the day, you have really people that just don't even understand that part. So they think the checkbox done of the diversity is done, and it's relatively easy to measure, right? We have this percent of women, this percent Black, white, Asian, blah blah blah, and then you publish your little report and you call it a day. And we're a diverse company, but if you don't really talk about the awareness about how an unconscious bias, and that goes to your point of emotional intelligence, impacts decision making, and that goes to what you guys said earlier, that's critical to the whole process. You've got to really think about the training of the people in your organization and how that change and how they are, can't control the direction all the time, but how you can come together and work cohesively as a team. And that's really about feeling a part of a team. People are going to have a huge revolving door. If you don't feel like you belong there, or you're just sort of this outside person in the clique, I mean, I think all of us at different points in time, reverting back when, you're in high school and just growing up, you walk up to a table and you think, oh, they're talking about you. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, but it's kind of intimidating, right? So you go off and sit in another corner and you feel left out. Okay. And, 3 days later, it all goes away, but it still resonates in your mind when you walk up to that table. So think about when you're coming in a room and having a meeting. Now, some of the aspect of the emotional intelligence where you're kind of chatting with people before meeting starting has evaporated and dissipated because of Zoom. But that's really a critical part of relationship building too. You can't just, that's what's sort of missing in a lot of the digital things that are out there, is that preemptive, when you get into the meeting room and you sit down and hey, how did Johnny, your son, do at football last night? Did they win their little league or whatever? And you remember that, and someone took the time to ask you about that, or your pet had to go to the vet the night before or something like that. Having that emotional connection with people in person is so important, and that is part of the inclusion process. And I fear that the more and more we go in this digital route, that we're going to forget some of those things. And it's harder to go call somebody right now or text or whatever. I just did a whole webinar on sales and marketing in the cybersecurity industry, and how do you sell to your target individual, because the blur between home and work-life balance in work has completely dissipated with COVID right now. So if you call somebody at 2:00 in the afternoon, first of all, you don't necessarily know what time zone they might be really working in, because they might not be in the original place that you thought they were, or you're dealing with your kid's crisis because they're doing also distance learning and they can't get logged in to their Zoom call. So, and they're late for class and they're going to get in trouble. And then all of a sudden you're late to your meeting, or you can't get your work done. So a lot of things have changed for a lot of us, and the weight of aspect, being able to ask somebody about that because you don't see them beyond getting on a Zoom call, and really caring about somebody and having that emotional intelligence, that connection and that relationship is really challenging out there. And that's going to be a challenge for all of us as leaders to maintain if we want to go down the path of and be successful with diversity. We've got to also really think about inclusion and doing so right now, and if we're going to stay in a hybrid work mode, digital work mode, or go back in person. And it's probably going to be some hybrid mode for the time being overall.
Yeah, it's gonna. So what you're saying basically is our inclusion challenge is worse because we're on Zoom, and so all of us need to pay more attention that everybody's dealing with so many, personal aspects being in their business aspect because we work from home now. That we got to be extra compassionate, have extra empathy, which is EQ. And then I also heard you say that it sounds like the people at the very top are probably a bit disconnected because they're looking at diversity stats and they're seeing that we're hiring more each year, Is there was
It
more of
looks
the
good on paper, but
it
the
looks good on
reality,
paper.
Exactly.
yeah,
So
but the reality is,
Yeah.
a lot of people, that lived in the big cities have smaller apartments or places to live, or they might live alone or with not a big family. So the isolation is real for a lot of people out there. And especially when you have, the shutdowns of like restaurants and businesses and things like that, where you don't have the
Yeah.
freedom to just kind of go out and just step
Yeah.
out of your apartment per se, and beyond going to walk your pet. That's really hard. So you start really feeling a whole different level of exclusion just from, friends, family, coworkers, and the like, because you really are isolated.
Yeah, it's going to make our jobs harder. So, to include people. So we need to pay attention. So if the diversity stats that the seniors are looking at, who we need to help solve this problem, are looking at that, are they going to start looking at retention stats? Is that happening? Are you all seeing that? Like, yeah, the corporation your size, on that's got to be happening. I've heard
Yeah.
of intention or bonuses tied to retention. I'm starting to hear about. What do you know?
Yeah, so what we typically do in our organization is we look at attrition rates, and we also look at hiring, right? Hiring and retention are two levers that, tell you the story. So we look at it quarterly for each of our departments, and we trend it, we look at patterns, and we take actions based on that. So that's how we kind of manage the diversity.
Have you heard of, like, what's the good stat on retention?
I
what's
looked one up,
somebody-
actually. I was looking one up. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I looked one up because I was curious myself, overall. So Harvard Business Review actually found that employees with inclusive managers have 1.3 times more likely to feel that their innovative potential is unlocked, which I thought was pretty amazing. And employees who are unable to bring their whole selves to work are 42% less likely to say that they'll intend to leave the job within a year. And those with sponsors have 62% more likely to have asked for and received a promotion. And 69% of the women who off-ramp would have stayed with the companies if they had a flexible work option. So the inclusivity is really powerful, and it really comes through in the retention statistic. It does not come down the shopping list of like, I have 60% women and 35% blacks and blah, 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 blah. It's coming really in, is your company a place you want to stay, grow, and work?
Yeah. And what's the right amount of time somebody should stick around? I mean, before the .com, people retired where they started. My father, my mother, lots of us know these stories, right? And then .com came, and I remember, because I was a young recruiter in tech in the early 90s, being told to tell them, you're going to make so much more money. There's stock options. That's when stock options overrode pensions, bonuses, everything else. And so next thing we knew, it was, oh, you're supposed to leave your job every 2 years. That's how you get a raise. And then it's like, well, what's that doing to us all? Now everybody's just got a job, not a career, and it's just about money. And so, then how do we now go back and be like, yeah, we need to groom and care? And, so is there a holy grail number on how many years is a good?
So actually in UST, our employee longevity and client tenure longevity, we have about 12 plus years, right? So which is something we are really proud of. So turnover being low is definitely an indicator, right? Whether that culture of inclusivity exists in a company. But the other side to it is at a CXO level, at a CISO level, job tenures are sometimes contract based. So you really can't say for sure. But if you look at all levels of the organization, I think you can draw some conclusions.
Yeah, and I want to hear from Mary and Jimmy. And I also want to make a point. You just said the word contract, which also changed in the late, our whole employment landscape in the late 80s, when taxes completely changed based on, contract and perm and capex and opex, and oh my gosh, and that is a big piece of it, because contractors are treated like second-class citizens in most organizations. Like, I don't even touch that work unless they get to work for me. Like, it's not happening. I won't even touch that work. It's gross, right? So like, oh my gosh, I forgot about how many people out there are contractors, and they're not allowed to come to the same meetings. They're not on the same email chains. A lot of places, they're not even allowed to go to the same parties or get the same free food. Like, what?
Yes.
How is that possible? Mary, what were you gonna say?
I started my career as a contractor. So for me, I've actually been at the casino the longest I've been at any of my jobs in the last 11 years. Because it's always been contract work, and it's government work, right? That's just, it's the nature of the beast. But it does affect how you move forward. So coming to the private sector, it was just it was a shock. It was different. And I'm just, I got to my 3-year mark and I'm like, all right, I think I'm supposed to move to something else now. Like, what do I do at this point? Like, do I stay? Do I go? And that definitely plays a role in your career progression. But I don't think of changing jobs every couple of years as a bad thing, because it helps you gain experience, right? Because you can stay at a company for 20 years, but you may be in 1 or 2 of the same position for 20 years. What experiences have you really gained that are different from what you already knew? So being able to change organizations and understand, how cultures work, and just the whole gamut of working for different companies helps you if you want to open your own business. It helps you big time in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I just want to say, and yet, like, life's about relationships in terms of enjoyment. And if we're breaking our relationships and then go creating new ones like that, it's not as powerful as sticking together. And so I get it. If the opportunity is not there, you got to go. And that's the problem. When we're talking about the training and the development of people. It just at the same time breaks my heart to think, you got to go make new friends. Like what Marci's saying, I got to go to a new picnic table and a new picnic table. And holy moly, not a lot of, connecting going on, right? So Jimmy, what's on your mind? What are you thinking?
So for me, this is where, once again, I'll go back to your network and how broad your network is, because hopefully within your network, you may be a mentee or you may have a mentor, or you may have an associate who may be working at the company you're thinking about jumping to, because the issue with money doesn't equal happiness. So you may jump to another company because it's been 2 to 3 years and it may be a bad opportunity. So hopefully you can leverage your network in that aspect. The other thing that I've realized is that I've worked at a company where all the senior executives have been there at least 20 years. Now, think about that is a hard ceiling. That's not even a glass ceiling. So when you recognize that those people aren't going anywhere, then that is, and depending on your, once again, that's where you and your men and your mentors will talk amongst each other and say, what is my career path? What do I want to be? Now, if I'm very happy doing what I'm doing and I'm very content, then stay where you are. Don't jump just to jump. But if you're at that hard ceiling and you want to break through, and the other thing about I've realized about working at another company too, and because unfortunately I've worked for a few companies, is that when you have a different philosophy than the executive team, and it's one of your core values, it's time to go. And that's once again where the inclusion comes in at, because hopefully your values mirror or is very similar to the executive team and the key decision makers. Because once that becomes at odds, the executives aren't going anywhere, even if you happen to be one of them. You are going to end up being the odd person out. So hopefully we're utilizing our, and this is why I keep reiterating network, because once I started working with mentees and started looking at their career path, because as soon as they get out of school, the first thing they're scared about is getting a job. But we all know already that there's a hiring shortage. So you getting a job is not the issue. You finding a job that's going to enhance your career, and make you happy is the issue. It's not finding the job, it's finding your job.
Yeah.
I would agree with you 100%. One size does not fit all. What your personal objectives and what you want to do is really about you. So for some people, They want to, have a work-life balance. They want to raise a family. So at the end of the day, that takes some time from both sides of the coin, where you want to be able to go to the baseball games at a reasonable hour, not miss them and be gone all the time, or things like that. So for each person, I think it's important for them to assess what they want out of life, live life to the fullest, and what they measure as success is going to be sometimes different than somebody else's measurement of success. There are people that are going to want to be the CEO of a company, and I have an entrepreneurial spirit. That's what I always dreamed of doing, although I didn't know what the business would be when I was a little girl, at the end of the day. But there are people that are just happy and excited to be, an architect and a manager, and, do what they want to do. At the end of the day, I would just say this: timetables of how long you've been in a company, within realistic measurements of them. At the end of the day, if you're hip hop jumping around, there's going to be an issue, right? You have to figure that out. Is it you or the company? But if you are looking, at the end of the day, you've got to interview the company just as much as they're interviewing you. You've got to decide if that's the place you want to be. If you end up being there for 20 years, that's okay. You end up there for 3 years, that's okay. It's really about what you wake up in the morning and get excited about doing and where you want to be. And if you don't feel like you belong there, then you probably should be looking somewhere else. And their feeling might even be mutual on both sides of the coin, at the end of the day. But you've got to take responsibility for yourself and create those opportunities and, have that work-life balance, and find the place, what you want to do, and find what I feel like I'm very lucky. I have found my calling in life, overall, but I know that's not the case for everybody. And I hope that, everyone has an opportunity to feel fulfilled with whatever it is that they choose to do and how they get to do it. How long are they work there, and whatever the role might be, it might be good for them.
Yeah, I think it's well said to say that, okay, as an individual, as a professional, you have to make your own decisions. And yes, whatever you need to do to care for yourself, you need to do. And then there's the conversation, hey, those in management, and if you sign up for management, that means you're responsible for somebody else, and you do not sign up unless you're willing to be responsible. And you people, I don't care what level you're at, you better care about the people that work for you, which means understand that they want the same things you want. You and them, we all want respect. We all want to be paid what somebody else is being paid to do the same job, is what I mean by equal pay. And we all want to have, transparency and respectful environments, and those, that inclusion behavior applied to us. And so those of us in leadership must make sure that our peers and our other organizations, and we speak up when we, see this injustice. And I'm hoping that, like the government, public sector starts to have to do more for people, i.e. if somebody's got an issue that's let's say an addiction in the government, you can't just say goodbye. You had to help put them in programs and give them support. And so I hope some of that, can get to the private sector, i.e., your bonuses are, impacted if your culture is a revolving door. Well, then why should you get a bonus? If you're a manager, it shall not be, again, if you're responsible for somebody else. So we got a lot of questions, folks, and we're almost out of time, but we can go a little bit over. I'd say that 2 or 3 of the questions are sort of under job descriptions. And if you don't, real quickly, of like gender, should I, it looks like somebody maybe in the staffing business saying, should I remove gender when I submit a professional? And I see some people nodding yes. I've heard a lot of other people say, no, that's ridiculous.
So it's obvious with what their name are and how you write their backgrounder if you're doing a professional submission. So you would say he or she or something like that. That's not a factor. I don't think you should be hiring and putting in the job description that this job is for a female, unless you're like in an actor type of role, right? You really need a female actor first. If it's role specific to a gender, that's one thing. But we're talking about cybersecurity here at the end of the day. And we should be thinking about what the individual brings to the table, not what gender they are, what color skin they look like. What skills do they have? Do they have the certifications? Do they have the skill set? Do they have the tools and technology? And then the soft side of things, would they fit into the culture of my company and be successful? So would they feel included? And that goes back to the point of, what do you interview them just as much as you interview you. Okay. And you've got to take responsibility for yourself in terms of interviewing the company to make sure it's right for you, in the same responsibility that the hiring manager or the hiring team is going to interview you to figure out if you're a good fit for them as well. And the best HR people and hiring managers do that at the end of the day. They look beyond the checklist of what's there. And the most successful hires is when you take the emotional intelligence and the hard skills together and bring it together to bring forth the right individual. And then, of course, what we talked about this entire time is the inclusion factor. They get there. Do they feel like they belong and are a critical part of the team? In the same fashion, that's not entitlement. You have to contribute to the team at the end of the day. So you have to make your opportunity. You have to you've opened the door of opportunity. Now you've gotten through. You need to have also work hard to stay there and be a team member and a team player in the same fashion that you're having that expectation of being able to be promoted, being a part of the team, and having your ideas appreciated.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And I think that this question comes, and it comes every time I'm talking about this topic, because so many people feel discriminated against just with unconscious bias, that whoever's hiring would prefer a man or prefer somebody younger, or, prefer somebody who's, not disabled, if that's in their resume. And so people are asking all the time, should I take this out about me? And I think, oh my gosh, like, we've got to go sell ourselves and hide who we are. That's, horrible. And so I'm always saying to people, well, do you really want to work somewhere that doesn't want to hire you because of what they, thought of your name or your picture or whatever? You don't, so you don't need to hide. And yet when I launched my platform, that is a job and profile platform, I made identity anonymous because I did want to remove the error, because you've got public profiles is basically what I'm talking about. That public profile, you can't tell the person's gender or age or even where they went to school. And so truly all unconscious biases are out and only the right content is there. But you can't do that as an individual out applying to jobs and in this broken system.
About LinkedIn Recruiter and the whole LinkedIn jobs feature. So I teach a class actually at the Tech Bridge, and we created the technology career program for disadvantaged young people in the technology industry here in Atlanta. And we teach them how to market themselves on LinkedIn and do so effectively and appropriately. And one of the things I always tell them is people will still judge a book by the cover. Okay. So they're going to put forth, they're going to judge some things, what you say about yourself and how you are presenting yourself. And it's not because of the color of your skin. I'm talking about truly appropriateness of your headshot, right? So if you're doing like a keg stand looking like a party girl, and that's your LinkedIn picture, well, that's what they're going to think you are. Okay. I wouldn't want to call you because I think you're not going to take my job seriously. In the same fashion, you want to present yourself in the context of how you want to be viewed and appreciated and considered. So your headshot needs to look professional, at the end of the day. You shouldn't, we go through like a lot about the headshot of what they should look like. And then the title, their power statement on LinkedIn, how you describe yourself. And then I also talk about, if you're on other types of social media, that you want to make sure that you transcend across all platforms, because a background check nowadays will have somebody go look at your social media in addition to go look at, you really work at the company? Do you have any kind of criminal background history and things like that? There are ways, and people are going to go look. If you're crazy on, Twitter or Facebook or something like that, and you're very hateful, but you have this whole other personality on LinkedIn, it's going to come out eventually. And it's going to be probably in some violation of some social media, policies of being hired if they don't catch it, or, it happens during the course of the employment, you really have to think about how you're presenting yourself. I'm not saying sequester or squelch your freedom of speech and expression. That's a First Amendment right, but it's how you do so and how you package yourself and how you promote yourself at the end of the day is very, very important. So how you want to be treated and perceived is how you need to be presenting yourself at the end of the day and taking responsibility for that.
So one of the things,
Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
so one of the things I've seen is that's great advice for people starting out when you don't have a brand. But once I've seen my peers develop their brand, then all of a sudden they're known, like Jack Daniels is known for his long beard and looking like
Looks like he should be in ZZ Top.
Yeah, exactly. And so once you build up your brand and people know you, once again, once you become part of that good old boy network, and that's me too, is that when I first started out, I was scared to post pictures because I wanted people to judge me on my technical chops, and I said, oh, that's that black man who wants to be in IT, who wants to be in security. And then once I realized I gotta forget about that, I gotta be me, and I actually have to lead the way for people behind me who are scared to actually post their picture on LinkedIn, who are scared to speak out about certain things. And so I wholeheartedly agree that people do judge a book by its cover, but hopefully you're presenting a great cover. And one of the things, the funny jokes that me and my friends have been doing is we've been posting our icon pictures with hoodies and masks on as a joke to show that, now is the new normal of the COVID thing. Because it used to be, you can, if I wore a hoodie, people would, that's where the unconscious bias comes in. Cause I'm 6 foot tall, 6'1". If I wear a hoodie and walked around, it looks a little different than somebody who's like 5 foot tall wearing a hoodie and walking around. So unconscious bias is definitely there.
Yeah, and you could also use technology to curb bias, right? So bias exists, it is within all of us. And so I think we could use technology to curb bias. We could make, profiles anonymous. All of those small things really make a huge difference. And also focusing the job description, not solely on, say, 10 years of experience on a specific tool or a platform or an AppSec, right? It'll eliminate a whole pool of candidates. So I think, like Marci was also pointing out, balance it out. See if the candidate has got good problem solving skills, he's a team player, balance the soft skills and the tech skills. So that'll actually open up your pool, right? It's not going to, you need to widen your pool, cast a net as wide as possible.
Yeah, willing to train, entry level.
Yeah,
we were all entry level, and somebody helped us and trained us and got us to the right places, and we must keep that up in order to solve this. And I'd still like to play for utopia, which which says we don't part ways with people. We're so good at caring for people that we're able to provide them with what they need to be the book that gets judged in a way that gets taken seriously, which is what we're talking about. And because what happens to the people that don't? That scares me. That means all those underrepresented, folks that didn't get the training on how to look or didn't get the support of making sure they don't put pictures on, out in the net, in social media, or what happens to them then, so let's play for that. Let's play for, everybody gets, support and training and to work at a place that takes care of them. We've got here on the screen, we're out of time. I was thinking what we could do is just take a look at these and maybe even provide some answers after. We can go till the hour. I'm sure we all have something at the hour. But
I do have a quick answer to both the DI from DKD staffing questions, if I could offer a real quick thought for you there. First of all, if you're doing your third-party staffing company, you're going to have to make sure that you're submitting a candidate that has not been a candidate before or submitted by another company. So admitting what they are in terms of their full name is going to be a disadvantage to you, and you're going to have the candidate just ultimately kicked out because you're going to make your hiring manager have to go figure it out, and you're going to run into some conflict issues out of the gate overall. So I don't recommend that. You have to disclose their name because they have to go check their system, make sure they have not been a candidate or submitted by another company. The second thing is there's no way in heck I, as a hiring manager or owning a company, that I would ever meet the person or hire somebody sight unseen. We would still do, like, our company's virtual at the end of the day. So we still do a Zoom kind of call or something like that, but there's no way we would ever do sight unseen. It's just not going to happen. It's not to cast judgment on what they look like or anything, but you've got to just make sure there's a whole gel and the person is there that you think you are. So a resume and a cover letter is just not going to cut the mustard in not being able to really talk to and see the candidate. I don't know a single employer that's ever going to do that.
Yeah, you can hurt their possibilities if you leave
Yeah.
their name off. For
So
sure.
I wouldn't recommend that. So.
Yep. Anybody else want to comment on any of these questions here? How do I tailor my job description? Yeah, go ahead.
So systematic racism is, I have alluded to this before, is something that I've experienced many times, but the reason why I actually got into tech and the reason why I like working in technology companies, hopefully you want to try to find a job that judges you based on your execution and your metrics of numbers, and not based on I like, I hope, I wish. And so if you work at a tech company that uses words like I like you, I wish this for you, I hope this for you, that sounds reasonable and kind, but that's not why I work in tech. To me, tech is about execution and being able to deliver in a metric-driven way.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Well said. We have to, if we can't be accountable, then there's no clarity, to how to move around, and it's super key. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we could talk for hours because, there's so much more we didn't even get to about programs and deeper in the mentorship. So let's have another. I'm sure, Richard, you're listening. We would like another, please, because we've got a lot more to get to. That being said, this was awesome. This is the kind of conversation we need. Yes.
We do have time for another question or two if you guys would like.
Sure. I feel people have to see you as a human, being first in respect. Yep. Let's see. Where's a question? No, I think we got the questions. I would just say on job descriptions, go to cybersn.com. I made what we have, a platform for the world, and you can just with clicks make your job descriptions, and there's no biases possible on that platform. What else do we have? What opportunities exist in LA area to expand, to expose young girls, middle school, high school to cybersecurity? Anybody got? What's that?
I talked to him already.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You already been communicating with Joe. Lovely. I think we got to them all, Richard, maybe behind the scenes. We're like multitaskers.
So I would, obviously we've been talking about our current jobs, but one of the things that I see about diversity and inclusion is how are we ensuring that our community, in terms of our work environment, that goes beyond just our job, because hopefully you have a career that spans several jobs. How are we working to ensure inclusivity within that environment?
Yeah. We need 2 and 3, Richard.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about how we're helping the next generation and really empowering them. I have some great experiences to share about that.
Yeah, one of the things that we did here at ISSA Los Angeles was, as a part of our annual security summit, we put together a Women in Security Forum, which was 2 days. At every single time slot over those 2 days, there was a woman speaker.
I remember.
And so we put our money.
Proud to be part of that. Been proud of being part of that. So.
Right, and Marci helped with that for a few years, and we got a lot of positive feedback. We basically put our money where our mouth was, because I've been speaking for years about how we have to be inclusive, and that was the way that I thought would be best. And it's worked out well. So every organization or company that puts on conferences needs to make a concerted effort to try to be inclusive. I know at OWASP, when we put on AppSec California, we discussed in the planning committee, we need to get women keynotes as well as women speakers. And there's a variety of reasons why we're not getting a lot of women people stepping forward to want to speak and presenting their speaking platforms. Some of it is that there's not enough, of course, but there's also a certain fear of rejection and a fear of what we've been talking about today earlier. So, you know, we need to encourage our peers to step up and support them in these efforts.
Yeah, I would say in men of color, I never see them at keynote. I mean, you know, Jimmy, I don't know, is it less than 1% founding CEOs of tech or for Black men? Is it less than 1% than women?
Yes, it's definitely less than 1%.
I mean, you know, so there we go. Like, you know, Black men are sort of being left out of this conversation. But when you said that, I thought I've never seen a keynote with a Black man.
A couple of years ago at AppSec Cali, we had Flea, so there you go.
Yeah, I love Flea. He's a great guy.
Let's do more.
No, it's funny because I can speak from experience. I probably know 3 other African-American men who've keynoted, like, you know, big conferences. I mean, you can do a small conference, but like, you know, it's and unfortunately that's the
sad reality, right? Yeah.
That's the reality of it. And so hopefully by doing, no, and look at this panel. I was like laughing because I love being a minority on this panel.
Right?
Sure, you are. You're the token guy.
It's done a 160 or whatever, 360. But it just goes to show that, you know, we really do have to go promote everybody to be up on the stage. And, you know, one of the things Secure Diversity does is every month we give 2 women an opportunity to come present. So we call it She Presents. Because like you said, Richard, you know, just tons of fear, you know? I mean, if it was fear just walking up to a table to say hi, I love that analogy, Marci, you know, I'm like, you know, going on stage or camera and presenting, you know, come on. Then most people are.
Yeah, it's been hard for people to transition over to digital, right? So my speaking skills really resided in in-person events, and I've really had to really think about and practice being on camera like this and everything like that. So I'm finding that's just not as, at the beginning of all this, people were very reluctant to go on camera at the very beginning, but now they're a little bit more comfortable with the whole idea. But some people don't want to be out there too. So keep that in mind, that some people like to be the audience and some people do like to be in the front of the room. That's what makes the world go around. And as a company that does marketing and events in person and now digital, we pick our speakers because of the quality of what their skills and what they bring to the table. Pretty rarely that I'll look at it from the perspective of what they look like, except when we do at ISC North America, we do like a women in security type of panel there. And usually I would prefer to have women on that panel, but just in general, I think we just all need to think about what we bring to the table and remember that color, you know, but you look, what is it? Beauty is only skin deep or something like that. So really what you have on the inside and overall is really what matters.
You know, at ISSA and OWASP meetings, if I remember, I always try to invite everyone who's in attendance. Well, remember physical meetings? Anyway, anyone who was there, to them, hey, you know, if you want to give a talk as an introductory talk of about 15 minutes before our main speaker, we'd love to have you. We're a warm, welcoming environment. If people stutter or forget something, we're forgiving. It doesn't matter. It's a great way for people to get their feet wet. And some people might become keynote speakers in the future, but you got to start somewhere. So my advice to everyone is push your envelope, get uncomfortable, because that's the way you'll grow.
That's how you're going to grow, is take a little bit of a and don't be afraid to fail either, you know.
Great seeing you, Mary.
I know, I got to jump in.